Hey and welcome to Making. You know those space documentaries where they show nebulas in 3D? Yeah, that's what we're doing here. You know the sort of documentaries I'm talking about. They're the ones shown at your local science museum or filler on Discovery. You'll get some talking heads going on about the Big Bang or size of the universe, and then the editor will be adding B-roll zooming in on photos, and then all of a sudden there'll be this one cool, really expensive looking shot where they rotate around a nebula in 3D. And you'll not be paying any attention anymore to what the science person is saying, instead you're looking for the next cool shot. And after about 10 minutes they reuse the same shot. Maybe in reverse this time. So let's do that. I'm going to get a photo from the ESO gallery, bring it into Photoshop to remove the stars, and then create a fake depth map by turning it into a grayscale image and blurring it loads. Then we'll open up Cinema 4D Lite and use the relief generator to give it depth, and then in After Effects we'll make it look wispy and add a bunch of 3D stars. Sounds like a lot of work. Let's get started. So, first things first, I chose the Orion Nebula and downloaded the JPEG version. It's 4K, so more than enough for our purposes. I've brought it into Photoshop to remove the stars. Now I've covered this in the earlier Photoshop Nebula tutorial, but we'll go to Select, Color Range, ignore the atrocious US spelling, wrong with you, the letter U that is, change the drop down to Highlights, and see how all the bright points are picked out? Great. Now adjust the slider to get a balance between the stars and the nebula bright points and click OK. Let's use the lasso tool and hold Alt to deselect the brightest points of the nebula. Let's go to Select and Modify and expand the selection. And then do the same to add some feathering. Then go to Edit, Content Aware Fill, and click OK. So that gets rid of loads of the tiny points, and then we'll use the Spot Removal tool to get rid of the bigger ones. It takes a little bit of patience, but don't worry if you miss any. The reason we're doing this is that we'll be adding this image as a texture in Cinema 4D, and the flat stars will really show up. At this point, YouTube suggests I should ask you to subscribe, because you'll forget at the end. So, subscribe? Once we have it ready, save your image and then go to Image, Mode, Grayscale. Discard the color information and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and set the value to about 15. We want to retain as much of the shape of the nebula, but we need to dump any rough edges. And then export this version as a PNG and you can quit Photoshop. Assuming you're using Cinema 4D Lite and not full-fat C4D, let's start After Effects and go to File, New, Max on Cinema 4D file. You'll be prompted for somewhere to save it, and then C4D Lite will open. Now, it's pretty cool that a 3D package is bundled with AE, but it is a stripped back version of C4D. There's some critical bits missing, but there's enough for our purposes. So what we're going to do is create a relief object and use the grayscale image we've just created to give our nebula shape. So go to Create, Primitive, wait, where's the relief? God damn it, they removed the knife tool and support for a 3D mouse, and now they've taken the Oh wait, it's here. Yeah, go to Create, Generate, Relief. Over in the Attributes panel, we now need to load in our grayscale image. Quick aside, if you make changes to the images, I cannot get the object to update. I have to make a new relief object and re-add the image. It's not a big problem, but if you don't know about it, you'll drive yourself nuts trying smoother and smoother images. Leave the sizes at 600 for the first or X box, set Y down to 50, that's our height displacement, and leave Z at 600. Now this version of the Orion Nebula that I'm doing in this tutorial is having the brightest points be the highest points. But the video I did in the preview, I actually had the brightest points be the lowest points to create like a canyon effect. To do that I use the Invert Y option, which you can see here. Cool. Now, let's create a new material. In the bottom Create, go to New Default Material. Double click on the new material, turn off color and instead go to the luminance channel. Now load in our edited starless nebula. In transparency, choose ethanol from the presets drop-down and uncheck the reflection checkboxes, and drop the brightness to 70%. So we've made our nebula slightly transparent, which helps make it look less solid. Continuing that theme, right-click on the sphere preview and choose plane. Helps us see what we're creating. Now, there's a sharp line at the edges, so uncheck transparency temporarily and check on alpha. Click the texture down arrow and choose gradient, and then click on this preview to enter the gradient settings. Set the type to 2D circular, and then grab the swatch pointers and switch them around. Keep the black from being too close to the edge, otherwise we reintroduce those edge lines. But it's a bit too perfect, so up the turbulence to 35%. Cool. Now we're going to add this material to a solid object, so we need to do a lot of work to make it look like a gas. Check the glow checkbox, and set the inner strength to 0%, and the outer to 200%, and the radius to 20 centimeters. And make sure use material color is checked. Now drag the material onto our relief object, and a quick render preview shows us we're getting there. Hold 1, 2 or 3 keys on your keyboard while left clicking on your mouse to move the camera around the scene. Let's create a light, not to light our scene, but to add some fake 3D clouds above the nebula. Go to Create, Light, Light, and in the light attributes, let's start by using the eyedropper to set a color. Pick part of the nebula image. And in visible light, choose visible. Position it above the brightest point of the nebula, it doesn't really matter. And then in coords, set Y scale to 0.1. A quick preview shows what I'm aiming for. A nice soft halo, but it's a bit too perfect. So click on the noise setting and set noise to visibility, type to soft turbulence, drop velocity to 0%, brightness to -40%, and contrast to 120%. In the visibility scale section, set X to 25, Y to 250, and Z to 25. The noise Y level is 10 times the size to counteract the light scale, where we made Y 1/10 the size. Okay, getting there. Next, go to Render, Edit Render Settings. Click on Effect Object Glow, and go back and add Soft Filter 2. We want to use every trick to make this look cloudy. And on that point, I wanted to show you how to make stars in Cinema 4D Lite, but I'll be adding some blurs to the C4D layer when we're back in AE, so I don't want to have stars only to make them blurry. But let me show you what's possible anyway. Create, Light, Light. In general, make it a visible light again, and in visibility, set the inner distance to 0.4 and the outer to 0.5. Make sure the light is selected in the Object Manager. Oh, by the way, you can double click on the name and rename any object here. Making sure it's selected, go to Tools, Duplicate. If you have full Cinema 4D, I'd totally use the Mograph cloner here with the randomizer, but we can't. Now, one of the modes for the duplicate tool is a long spline, and what we're trying to do is distribute a bunch of stars as randomly as possible. So hit F2 to switch to the top view, and using the sketch tool in the spline menu, go nuts. Draw as random a shape as you can. F1 to switch back to the normal view, and select our star again and go to Tools, Duplicate. Switch mode to a long spline, and drag in our spline object into the space. Set copies to 150. Scroll to the bottom of the panel and click Apply. C4D will make 150 copies of our star, distributed along our sketch spline. All well and good, but a bit flat. So now go click on the tiny plus next to the star's copy group and select all the stars underneath. You can use Shift here to help. I miss Mograph Cloner. Once they're all selected, go to Tools, Randomise. In the second move box, set a suitable Y position. I initially went with 40 but changed it to 100 later. And that's how to make stars in 3D space in Cinema 4D Lite. Delete them. Now we're done in C4D Lite except for the project settings. Go to Edit, Project Settings. Set your frame rate and maximum time. By default, C4D is 30 frames per second and 90 frames long, so 3 seconds. You'll want to up that. Easiest way, set your frame rate in the maximum time, type that, hit star, type in the number of seconds. Click Save, close Cinema 4D and return to After Effects. Drag your files onto Create New Composition button to match settings. Create a new camera by going to Layer, New Camera. In the Cinema Effects settings, set the camera drop down to Center Comp Camera, and fly your camera around as best as you can. And set the renderer to current to see the final rendered version. It's got that 3D object look. We want to diffuse any edges, but keep our details. I went through all the combinations of blurs and referenced AE's own help pages, and this is what I came up with. Duplicate your Cinema 4D layer, hit enter and rename this to Blur Reference. You can turn off the other C4D layer for a moment, and then go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Bilateral Blur. Bilateral Blur blurs an image so the edges are preserved, which is sort of the opposite of what we want. Uncheck the Colorize box, and we have the grayscale image. Let's up the contrast by going to Effect, Color Correction, Levels, and drag the black point to about halfway and the midpoint to about 3/4 of the way over to the black point. Oh no, I've missed a bit and I didn't spot it until the edit. What I really needed to point out is that I should also apply a channel blur, which is also in Effect Blur and Sharpen, and set the alpha blur on this to 10 pixels. That smooths out the edges a bit further, but still retains the detail. Okay, now turn the visibility of this layer off, and on the original C4D layer, go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Compound Blur. Set the blur layer to our blur reference, and set the drop down to Effects and Masks. Set the amount to 10, but we don't need the stretch, and check the invert blur checkbox. So Compound Blur, which uses luminance values of a reference layer, blurs the brightest parts of our nebula, which we've made the edges. Now I've tried various combinations of effects, Smart Blur, Find Edges, and this method got me closest to an object with fluffy edges. There's one slight issue though. Compound Blur isn't some clever 3D blur. So if I pull the camera right back, I can't see the nebula clearly. We're going to need an expression. Fortunately, it's a simple one. Ish. Expand Compound Blur on the timeline and hold Alt and click on the maximum blur stopwatch. And then use the expressions library and go to Interpolation, Linear T, T-, etc. This is a range mapper. Let's replace T with another expression. Highlight T and go back to the expressions library, and this time go to Vector Math, Length, 0.1, 0.2. Now we'll use the pick whip to select our camera's position to replace 0.1, and 0.2 we'll use the camera's point of interest. You could use a 3D null instead, that's up to you. So now we have the input number. Let's set our behaviors. From my initial animation, I started about 700 pixels up, and I want 0 blur. So replace Tmin with 700, and value 2 with 0. And then I want the blur to be at maximum when I'm about 200 pixels from the point of interest. Point of interest is roughly at the center of the nebula here. So Tmax becomes 200 and value 1 becomes 10. Compound blur does leave me with a feathered edge of the frame. There's different ways to deal with that. Probably the easiest is to take this comp, drop it into another and scale it up a little. But if you can't do that for whatever reason, if you expand the transform options, you'll see scale is already in use. And you can't parent this layer to a null and scale that up. What you can do though is go to Effect, Distort, Transform, and use that effect's scaling property to scale up the nebula. Almost done, but we still need stars. Fortunately for my dedicated subscribers, we've covered stars a few tutorials ago. For everyone else, take a look at my starfield tutorial. In that we made a preset for a 3D starfield using CC Particle World. So I'm going to add a new solid and then go to User Presets and apply it. And we're done. This isn't my favourite method of making a nebula, but it gives you more depth than just a flat image and allows you to fly around a real nebula. I've tried using both Video Copilot's Element 3D and also Trapcode Particular to achieve similar and couldn't get anywhere close. Cinema 4D Lite has removed the option to save as an OBJ file, so I was left with the layer emitter in Particular, which got me nowhere. You can make your nebula in C4D and use the current state to object to get the model into Element, but the result wasn't worth it. Thanks as always for watching. If you get stuck, ask in the comments below. There's more tutorials to come in this series. Subscribe, hit the god-awful bell, and you'll be alerted when I publish.